Hello everyone, James here. Listen, one of the biggest questions I keep hearing in regards to foreign TV shows and movies is the dub better or is the sub better? Which is it? Do you prefer listening to a foreign movie or show in its original native language, or do you prefer hearing it with American actors or English actors doing it in, well, English? This is a big question I've been kind of wondering for a long time. And to be honest, I don't think this is a really fair question, as actually there's so much to be thinking about. When we talk about dub versus sub, as I just said, this starts like a huge controversial argument all over the internet. So many people talk about it. There's still, to this day, I see so many arguments about it, especially in regards to, say, Japanese shows, which you often hear me talk about a lot. When we want to look at a dub versus sub, and this is specifically going into voice acting as opposed to just everything else, the thing is there's actually so much more to a dub than you might understand. For instance, when we think about a dub, we often think like all it is just the voice actors saying the exact same thing but in English. Well, there's actually so much more to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to break down this category into these individual parts, and we're just going to look at each individual section to really see what goes into dubbing a show. And so what we're going to look at is we're going to look into casting, translation, the acting performances themselves, and just even a few little things as to why we want to prefer watching something in our own native language compared to, say, a foreign language. Now, before I start going into explaining how a dub works, I do want to clarify that in a way, I kind of understand where this question comes from, because let's be honest, there have been several examples where the dubbing wasn't that great. And understand, when I say a dub is not that great, first off, this is an opinion. Also, number two, I'm not blaming a specific person. It's all a contribution, as we're going to look to in a second. So I'm sure all of you are familiar with the original show Yu-Gi-Oh! I actually have a whole video talking about how Yu-Gi-Oh! Came to be, which you can watch. But essentially, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a Japanese anime, and the rights to translate the Yu-Gi-Oh! Japanese show for an American audience was licensed by 4Kids Animation. But the thing you have to understand about 4Kids Animation is what they've been doing for 20 years with the anime. They've taken the liberties of changing names, changing stories. As an example, in the Japanese anime, there's a character called Janucci. Well, in 4Kids Animation English dub, the name got changed to Joey Wheeler. Or in the original Japanese version, there's a character called Anzu. But in the English dub, that got translated to Taya Gardner. The other thing you have to understand is, so the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Shows were more geared towards a teen audience. When 4Kids Animation licensed the Yu-Gi-Oh! Show, they were gearing it towards kids. So what does that mean? Well, that means the shows cannot feature blood. They're not going to be any sexual content or any mention of death. Well, the Shadow Realm was actually a replacement for topics dealing with death. So when you have a show that's geared towards kids and you're used to watching the show that's aimed towards teens, and especially when anime in general is geared towards teens, it's kind of no wonder when you watch the shows that sometimes the voice acting can be over the top and really goofy sounding, but that's specifically because it's geared towards young children. I'm going to give you an example from Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc V, just so you can hear a bit of a difference between what the original Japanese was trying to capture versus what the English translation captured.
今日は僕のワンマンショーへようこそ。何がワンマンショーよ。一人じゃデュエルできないでしょうが。
Welcome one and all to the Yuya Spectacular!
What? This isn't all about you! I happen to be dueling in this match too!
We could argue that these were pretty weird because they don't match the original intent. They sound really, really off. There is a lot of stuff that's arguably very, very weird.
This is nothing more than a minor setback.
Funk, yes. Funk, yes.
Understand the context of how these things kind of happen, how they evolve, and just how the final product becomes the way it is. Okay, next I want to talk about casting, and I think this is really, really important to discuss, mainly because I believe that English-speaking actors tend to get a bit of a bad rep and are usually at the forefront of any criticism for an English dub show. The reason casting is important is it's an important stage in the filmmaking process where you're basically finding the talent to bring a character to life. Typically when we see a live action movie, these actors are not only the sound of the characters, but they're also the physical embodiment of that character. In an English dub translation, it's a little bit different because they only bring a voice. English translations can often be at a bit of a disadvantage because we as anime viewers can sometimes have seen an anime in its original Japanese version before we get to hear it in an English dub, meaning we're already used to hearing these characters sound a particular way and speak in a different language. So then when we cross over and we start hearing these English actors portray these characters using an English language, it can sound a little jarring. That's not to say that there have not been times where casting has really not been done correctly in an anime, and I'm going to give you an example in just 1 second on how casting can actually portray a bit of a problem. And so the example that I want to talk to you about is none other than one of my favorite romance animes of all time, Quintessential Quintuplets. First, we gotta talk about Josh. I love Josh as an actor. He has done an amazing performance as Armin Arlert in Attack on Titan.
For humanity's glory, and what little time I have left to live, I will advocate his strategic value!
He's done an amazing job as Tokiyami in My Hero Academia.
Did you think I was slow? Dark Shadow! Dark Fallen Angel!
The list goes on and on and on. He is wickedly talented. That being said, I don't think Josh should have played Futaro in Quintessential Quintuplets, and let me explain why this is important. So remember what I said before about how casting is about finding actors to portray the characters and bring them to life. The English dub can be at a bit of a disadvantage because we already know what the voices sound like in Japanese. But in a way, it can also help to find the right actors in order to portray these characters for an English audience. If we break down the cast of Quintessential Quintuplets, we basically have the main guy, Futaro, and then we have basically 5 sisters, Nino, Yotsuba, Miku, Itsuki, and Ichika. All 6 of these characters have very distinct personalities. Futaro is basically the smartest kid in the entire school. He's also very harsh in judging others. He comes from a very poor background, which means he's also very easy to judge others when they spend a lot of money. He also prides himself in being able to be the smartest person in the entire school and is not afraid of showing that off and belittling other people if they're not as smart as he is. He is not a charming person. He is very introverted than one might seem. When you hear the Japanese actor portray Futaro in the Japanese cast, it's often portrayed as such. He's a very closed-off person, he's not eccentric, he's not charming, so the voice fits perfectly.
この中で昔俺に会ったことがあるよって人。
何よ急に。どういうこと？
そりゃそうだよね。お前らみたいなバカがあの子のはずねえわ。
Okay, one more test. Raise your hand if we met a long time ago.
Where'd that come from? I'm confused.
I guess I should have known. That girl wasn't an idiot, so it's just not possible.
Hey, you don't have to be a jerk about it!
Josh, he has a very eccentric personality. He also has a very deep, loud, commanding voice, which can work for Armin Arlert as he begins to gain confidence. That works for Tokiyami, as Tokiyami is meant to sound very threatening and very overwhelming to the enemy, but that's not who Futaro is. So why on earth would Josh be casted for this character? Well, I actually don't know, but my wild guess is that Josh is known for voicing lead male parts in harems. Case in point, Quintessential Quintuplets, Date Alive, High School DD, the list goes on and on and on. As far as the acting goes, it's just great. When it comes to the translation, it's doing just fine. But as we can see, not all actors can perform every character out there. So making casting decisions can heavily impact how the overall performance, especially in English dub, can be. Okay, next thing that I want to talk about, I think doesn't really get enough recognition when it comes to the dub, and that's essentially the people who have to overall translate the anime. Like, did you seriously expect that the actors are just reading off the subtitles of the anime? No, someone has to translate that, and their sole job, essentially, translate the anime from Japanese to whatever the native language is. In this case, we're talking about English. Now, to simply say that they're translating an anime from Japanese to English is a humongous understatement, because translators have to do so much in their job. We're going to talk about 2 things that translators have to do. One, translate in a way that is relatable and understandable to the native speaking audience by using common language familiar to that audience, as well as matching lip movements. Both these things are not easy. So going back to translating in a way that's relatable to your audience, this is huge, but sometimes that audience or that native land might have unique phrases and wording that only that audience will use. So take this example from a fantastic rom-com called My Dress-Up Darling, where it does a fantastic job at using words and phrases to an English-speaking audience that gets the same point across.
Whoa, dude, what's your story?
No! This is, it's chill. I mean, not chill, but cool. Just shut up, dude!
It's not just simple enough for a translator to just simply translate the anime dialogue from Japanese to English, but they have to do it in a way so that when the actor says the line, they can do so by matching the lip movements of the characters that are speaking. This is a lot harder than you might think. Only very few times does it seem so natural that you're hardly even paying attention to what's going on. Take this example from the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now, I'll be very honest with you, until I watched the gameplay for Final Fantasy VII Remake, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about the entire franchise. And as soon as I saw the gameplay, I actually thought that the game was made in America because of how seamless the English voice acting was to the gameplay, until I realized that the game was actually Japanese and it's being translated into an English dub. But just watch how seamless the translation is to the lip movement in the gameplay.
その人キャリアを捨てるわけ？名前なんだっけ？
元ソルジャーだとよ。
ああ。
名前はクラウドストライフ。武装路線で行くとなればプロフェッショナルの参加は不可欠だ。
He's got balls, this, what was his name again?
Cloud Strife.
Right.
And he isn't a soldier anymore. Still, he's a professional, unlike the rest of us.
So kudos to the translators of Final Fantasy VII the Remake for the English-speaking audience. There are times where the translation is done with so much difficulty. So an example that I want to focus on today is from an amazing comedy movie called Konosuba, Legend of the Crimson Demons. And if you haven't had a chance to watch the Konosuba show, period, it's a fantastic comedy, highly recommend it. The animation for the character's lip movement most of the time is specifically animated for an established Japanese voice, which doesn't automatically translate to English dub very, very well. So the translators are going to have to find different wording and different ways to express the same point and try and somehow work around the lip movements to make it work out, as well as the established dialogue to try and make it work. I just want to show you where the translation specifically it wasn't the greatest, but then again, as I said, you have to understand the lip flaps, the established dialogue. It's not that easy to simply translate, but let me show you specifically what I mean.
Darling. Love me.
Oh yeah.
So as you can see, based on the examples I simply showed you, there's so much more to a translator's job than simply just translating from Japanese to English or from Japanese to another language. Try watching a movie or a show that was made in America where the actors are already speaking English, and then try watching it in a foreign language and notice how the lip flaps may not necessarily match up too perfectly.
お前の負けだ。地の利を得たぞ。
It just goes to show you that just the translation alone, there's so much to think about and so much to consider in order to make that dub so seamless. All right, now this next section, I'm sure a lot of you really want me to finally touch on this point. That is when the actors just don't do a good job at their acting. Now, sometimes this can go back to casting, but we're just focusing solely on an actor's performance. There was a point in time when acting for an English dub was done fairly poorly, but you have to understand this is actually quite a long time ago when dubbing was kind of just first introduced. A lot of people didn't really take dubbing in anime, or a foreign movie or show for that matter, quite seriously. So oftentimes there were kind of these just random actors that just got pulled in just to simply do a job, and it wasn't taken with as much seriousness as it does nowadays. Even so much, sometimes there would be an animation studio who would try and do their own dubbing of a show. They would try and find other Asian actors to also perform an English dub. And so then you end up with a lot of really strange sounding voices and some stuff that doesn't actually quite match. I don't want to focus on this too much, because really a lot of the really well-known bad performances were really back in the early days of dubbing, such as these examples.
What's that light? Ah!
Oh no! Miss Harada saw it too! I'm so embarrassed!
Be serious, you dumb girl. Do you really think you like me?
My darling, I don't understand why you ask me such a thing.
But as I mentioned, a lot of the times now with dubbing, it's actually taken with so much seriousness and so much consideration as to finding talented actors and actors that will do the best job that they possibly can in order to get the character across, get the tone across, and even add their own flair to it, especially when it comes to, say, a comedy, for instance. Okay. Finally, to our last point. I'm probably going to lose a lot of you at this point in this video, and that's because now I want to focus on actually talking about how a dub can actually be better than a sub sometimes. There's many reasons why an English dub, especially for an English-speaking audience, will be better than necessarily listening to the Japanese. So as we discussed, sometimes listening to your own native language can help resonate with you so much better. When I watch a drama or an action-oriented anime, I prefer listening to it in English just because I know that if a scene gets emotional, if something gets intense, and I really want to feel the emotion of the scene and really feel the emotion of the character, I'm going to resonate a lot better by listening to that in my own native language than I would in a foreign language. The other thing that we also just talked about is often in a dub, it can often be a lot more relatable because the English dub is using words and phrases that's very common in your world, in your native language. Or here's another thing that you may not have considered. Sometimes by listening to English actors do the anime, sometimes you can be introduced to a wide range of different talents and different styles of voices and just different voices in general from an English dub. But don't just take my word for it. Listen to these examples of some of the best dubs I've ever heard in an anime and see how much more relatable and how much more interesting they make the dub for you.
Sometimes my girlfriend...
Just do me a favor and stop making me worry so much.
You're so incredibly cool.
Ishigami likes them tidy whities.
You pervert.
Hooray! I did the thing!
I need a lady friend!
With this strategy, he maintains a cooler image by seeming indifferent, saying things like, yeah, it's not bad, figured you guys might like it, while simultaneously piquing Kaguya's interest.
You're a terrible liar. Okay, so your parents. What exactly did you tell them about me after the accident?
Huh? I said the cutest girl in the universe just saved my life.
Well, don't you think that description is gonna make meeting them kind of awkward for me?
Not at all.
Your reaction was priceless. I'm not actually upset with you.
Teasing again. Find another pastime.
Equivalent exchange! Huh? I'll give half of my life to you if you give half of yours to me!
No good reason to kick the guy out of here just yet. Not quite yet. It's not the policy of what the hell's our name now?
Barnacle Battlefront.
Oh yeah, the Barnacle Battle...
Oh!
That's it, it's going back to the Underworld Battlefront.
That was a nice...
What's going on with her?
It's true! I can't block out the pain! I don't feel any pain anymore!
So clench your butt cheeks, kid. And yell this from the depths of your heart!
So overall, there's not really a right or wrong answer to the question, are anime dubs worse than subs? It's a matter of preference, it's a matter of context, it's a matter of looking at a specific example and seeing, okay, well, do they do the translation better or the performance better or anything better for that matter? But more importantly, it's just, do you enjoy listening to an anime in your native language, or do you prefer listening to it in Japanese? So thanks very much for listening, guys. If you like this video, please make sure to like and subscribe. As always, have a very Merry Christmas and a fantastic 2023. I'll see you guys in the new year with brand new content, and I will see you next time.